Have you ever stepped away for just a moment, only to come back and feel like something wasn't right? Not broken, not moved, just wrong. What if someone you loved vanished for 10 minutes, and when they returned, their face was older, their voice heavier, and their eyes looked like they had seen things no human ever should? Tonight's story isn't about time travel. It's about time stealing something it was never meant to give back. And once you hear what happened during those missing 10 minutes, you may never look at a clock the same way again. This is the account of a man who stepped out of his home one ordinary evening and came back 10 years older. No machines, no portals, no explanations that make sense. What makes this story disturbing isn't just what happened, it's how quietly it happened and how easily it could happen to anyone. Because the most terrifying mysteries don't announce themselves, they just walk back through the front door. Daniel and Rebecca Holt had been married for 6 years. Not the kind of marriage people write songs about. No screaming arguments, no dramatic passion, just routines. Tuesday nights were leftovers, Thursday nights were documentaries, Sunday mornings were quiet. And on this particular evening, Daniel realized he'd left his phone in the car. He kissed Rebecca on the cheek, grabbed his keys, and said he'd be back in a minute. The clock on the stove read 8:17 p.m. Rebecca barely looked up as the door opened, then closed. Nothing felt strange. At first, 5 minutes passed, then 8. At 10 minutes, Rebecca glanced at the clock again. 8:27 p.m. She frowned. The car was parked right outside. The porch light was still on, but Daniel was gone. The air outside looked thicker somehow, like heat rising off asphalt, except it was cold. That was the moment unease crept in. Not panic, just the feeling that something had paused and forgotten to resume. Then the front door opened. Rebecca turned, already preparing to complain. The words never came. Daniel stood in the doorway, breathing hard, shoulders slumped. His hair was streaked with gray, deep lines carved into his forehead. Wrinkles traced his eyes. 10 minutes ago, he was 34. Now he looked closer to 45. Rebecca laughed nervously, trying to make sense of it. She asked him what this was supposed to be. Daniel didn't smile. He looked at her like someone waking from a nightmare, unsure if he was still inside it. Then he spoke. "What year is it?" The room went cold. Rebecca answered. Daniel staggered backward and grabbed the wall. "No, that's not right." She asked where he'd been. He shook his head slowly. "I was gone for years." Rebecca checked the clock again. 8:28 p.m. Only 1 minute had passed since she last looked. She reached out to touch him. Daniel flinched. That's when she noticed his hands, scarred, calloused. Not the hands of a man who worked at a desk, the hands of someone who had survived something. Daniel sat down heavily and began to cry. Not loudly, just silent tears falling onto the floor. Then he whispered something that made Rebecca's blood run cold. "I tried to come back sooner." Hours passed before Daniel could explain what happened. And even then, his words didn't always make sense. He said when he stepped outside, the street wasn't there anymore. No houses, no stars, just a long gray road stretching endlessly in all directions. The sky never moved. The air felt wrong, like breathing underwater. At first, he thought he was dreaming. Then his legs began to ache. His stomach growled. Days passed, then weeks. There were others, people who had stepped outside to take out the trash, people who blinked too long at a mirror, people who followed a sound they shouldn't have. They didn't age the same way. Some aged too fast, some barely at all, and some forgot who they were entirely. Daniel said the worst part wasn't the hunger. It wasn't the endless walking. It was the feeling of being watched by something that didn't have eyes, something that measured them, like time itself had grown curious. He tried to count days, but the sky never changed. No sun, no night, just existence. And there was a rule everyone learned too late. You can't leave the same way you arrived. Daniel spent years searching for a way back. When he finally found it, he was afraid to use it, because everyone who went through before him came back wrong. Some didn't come back at all. Daniel paused before saying the next part. "I think I was lucky." Rebecca wasn't sure she agreed. Doctors couldn't explain it. Biologically, Daniel had aged nearly a decade. Cells, bones, memory, all consistent except the timeline. Psychologists diagnosed trauma. They couldn't explain the scars. Daniel woke up screaming at night. He avoided mirrors. Clocks made him anxious, and sometimes he would stop mid-sentence and stare at nothing. Rebecca once asked him what he was seeing. He answered quietly, "I think it's checking if I still belong here." He never stepped outside alone again. And here's the detail that still chills people who hear this story. Daniel started aging normally again, as if whatever had taken those 10 years was finished with him, or worse, had let him go on purpose. 10 years later, Daniel died peacefully in his sleep at 54, exactly the age he should have been, almost like time corrected itself. Daniel Holt disappeared for 10 minutes, but he lived a decade no one else remembers, a reminder that reality isn't as stable as we pretend it is, and sometimes the scariest doors are the ones we open every day. So tonight, if you step outside, if the air feels different, if silence lasts just a little too long, maybe don't check the time, because it might already be checking you. If you want more stories that crawl under your skin and refuse to leave, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Leave a comment and tell me, do you think Daniel escaped, or was he allowed to return? And when you're ready for another story that will keep you awake tonight, click the next video. Sweet dreams, if time allows.